Welcome to the 700 Club. The Israeli military and the government are united in their goal of finishing off Hamas. That's the word from both sides, after headlines saying the two were divided over their approach to end the war.
Meanwhile, Israel continues to face fire from Hezbollah in the north. The terrorist group has so many missiles, Israel's Iron Dome defense system may be overwhelmed. Julie Stahl has the story from Jerusalem.
The IDF's main spokesman, Daniel Hagari, appeared to question Israel's ability to wipe out Hamas in an interview with Israeli Channel 13.
Hamas is an idea. Whoever thinks we can eliminate Hamas is wrong.
He said the way Palestinians in Gaza think about Israelis has to change or the violence will continue.
This business of destroying Hamas, making Hamas disappear, it's simply throwing sand in the eyes of the public. If we don't bring something else to Gaza, then at the end of the day, we will get Hamas.
The IDF quickly put out a follow-up statement saying Hagari was talking about how hard it is to eradicate Hamas as an ideology and an idea, and added the military is behind the Israeli government's goal of wiping out Hamas's ability to physically govern or fight. The Prime Minister's office said the IDF is, of course, committed to this goal.
We will not leave the Gaza Strip until we return all our hostages, both the living and the dead. We're doing this mission and also many other missions, and for now it's better to be silent about it.
But sad news about the hostages reportedly left in Gaza. The Wall Street Journal reports U.S. officials suggest as few as 50 of them may still be alive. And a new development in another controversy that's been in the headlines, Netanyahu's accusation that the Biden administration has been withholding weapons from Israel, which the White House has strongly denied. Two Republican senators are saying the administration really is slow-walking the weapons transfers. Republican Senator Tom Cotton wrote to the White House, "Your administration is engaged in bureaucratic sleight of hand to withhold this crucial aid to Israel during a shooting war," saying the White House is covering this up with weasel words and bureaucratic process. Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty also wrote, "The White House is mad because Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is telling the truth." Meanwhile, despite widespread allegations of famine in Gaza, two Columbia University professors studying the issue say plenty of food has gone into the area, enough to feed every person there daily. The professors stated the United Nations and International Criminal Court are using famine that never was, hoping to stop the war. And in northern Israel, an all-out war with Hezbollah seems to be fast approaching as the Jewish nation suffers from almost daily air attacks on northern Israel and a displaced population of 80 to 100,000 people. With Hezbollah's more than 150,000 missiles, U.S. officials worry Israel's Iron Dome could be overwhelmed, leaving the Jewish state more vulnerable to rocket attacks. And while the world focuses on Israel's current battles, the Washington Post is reporting Iran is producing nuclear fuel so quickly it could accumulate several bombs' worth of nuclear fuel every month. Iranian leaders have long threatened to wipe Israel off the map. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, my fear is there'll be a much wider regional war that will erupt, and it'll all be sparked by Hezbollah and these rocket attacks. The times are very serious. And if Hezbollah continues to fire these rockets and Israel being forced to go into southern Lebanon, will Hezbollah then fire against Cyprus? That's their current threat. They did it just the other day. Will Iran get involved? If Iran gets involved, will the U.S. get involved? Will Europe get involved? Will Turkey get involved? Will Egypt get involved? Will Jordan get involved? All of these are open questions. This is a time to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the peace of Israel. These are incredible times that we're living in. In terms of what the real enemy is, you can point at Hamas, you can point at Hezbollah. But we also need to shine a very bright spotlight on radical Islam. And whether you call it Al-Qaeda or ISIS-K or Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas or Hezbollah or Palestinian Authority or Fatah. You look at all of these different groups, and they're all united in a hatred of Israel and a hatred of the Jews. And they're very serious. When they say from the river to the sea, they really mean it. They really mean that they want to wipe every Jew off the planet, and particularly in Israel. But let me add to it that they view Israel as the little Satan and you and I as the great Satan. So if we don't stand with Israel now in her desperate hour of need, what do we expect to happen? If Israel can no longer stand, well, their next target will be you and me. And so right now we need to recognize that and say, we stand with Israel. In other news, more than 100 million Americans are dealing with blistering heat. John Jessup has that story and more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. It's certainly hot across the Northeast and parts of the Midwest. And sadly, it's going to get hotter in some areas with a heat wave setting record temperatures. Many have taken to the water to try to get some relief, as the thermometer is expected to reach around 100 degrees or more in some places, including right here in the nation's capital. Philadelphia already declaring a heat emergency, and the heat wave is expected to spread throughout the region. Forecasters say a cold front will bring some relief by next week. While much of the northern part of the country is focused on heat, people in Mexico and Texas have been dealing with the aftermath of Tropical Storm Alberto. The storm killed 4 people in Mexico, hitting the country with strong winds, heavy rainfall, and flash floods as the remnants of the system spread across the country. And the storm surge brought floods to the village of Surfside Beach on a barrier island in Texas, leaving behind damaged roads and lots of debris. Fortunately, though, very little damage. Well, the American Civil Liberties Union and other groups are suing Louisiana over its new law requiring all public schools to display the 10 Commandments. Other commandments cases have lost in the courts before, but as Lori Johnson reports, advocates believe the Louisiana law has a good chance of surviving legal challenges.
Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry signed into law a bill requiring the 10 Commandments be easily readable on a poster-sized display in every publicly funded classroom in the state from kindergarten through college by 2025.
If you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses.
Republican State Representative Lauren Ventrella co-sponsored the bill.
Because I believe in it. Because I believe that these are important morals and ideals that our students should have access to read if they choose.
Opponents say they'll challenge the law based on the argument that it violates the constitutional premise of separation of church and state.
And this law flies in the face of that basic foundation.
However, Louisiana puts forth the 10 Commandments in not so much a religious, but rather a historical framework.
This is not forcing, requiring, sanctioning, coercing anybody to read this document. It's merely posting it there for the students to have the option to observe the historical and moral context of this text.
Likewise, experts say the fact that Louisiana is displaying the 10 Commandments for their historical significance should also provide legal protection.
The 10 Commandments clearly form the foundation of law and government and have clearly shaped our law and our government policy. So having the 10 Commandments displayed anywhere, whether it's in public school or elsewhere, is very consistent with our history and our tradition of law and government.
Some legal analysts say today's Supreme Court will likely allow the Louisiana law to stand based on a high court ruling 2 years ago.
There's been a total shift in the United States Supreme Court with respect to overruling the 1971 Lemon versus Kurtzman case. It was that case that has been historically used to challenge 10 Commandments displays or One Nation Under God or nativity scenes.
Thankfully, the Supreme Court has ended that reign of tyranny, of that hostility.
That 2022 Supreme Court ruling, combined with the way Louisiana called for displaying the 10 Commandments based on their history and tradition rather than religious purposes, means other states will likely follow suit.
Well, we've been providing assistance and help to a number of legislatures around the country so that they can really digest this new era that we're in.
Notably, Louisiana requires a 4-paragraph attachment on each copy of the 10 Commandments, describing how they were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries, further emphasizing their history and tradition. The displays will also be paid for by private donations, not by the state. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Lori. Gordon, back over to you.
Well, my expectation is this will probably end up at the Supreme Court, and it'll take the Supreme Court to tell us it's actually legal to talk about the 10 Commandments in our schools, which is it's incredible given our history. The history is quite clear that we respect the 10 Commandments, and certainly our founders did. You know, did they always obey them? Is no, but they at least respected them. Here's something you may not know. There was a MIT study was done by a psychologist there who was an Israeli, but not a believer. But he put before students in various tests that if they signed a pledge or if they read what was supposedly an honor code, he tried to claim MIT had an honor code, it doesn't. But in that, it was an amazing observation of human behavior. The more you remind people of there are standards of conduct, it actually lifts the conduct of the entire group. That even if it's not actually an honor code at the university, if you claim that there is, and you ask them to sign a pledge that they've done work under an honor code, well, then it raises the morality of the entire group, and you have, even outside of an examination, they took them into some sort of moral quandary, and the ethical behavior survived. When we lose this moral instruction in our schools, we're losing something that's very precious to the entire society, and we need to recognize that. Education used to have as a fundamental, we want to teach moral standards, and we want children not to grow up, you know, as libertines. We want them to grow up under the knowledge that there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. And when you get rid of any kind of standard, well, you end up where we are today, which is sort of chaotic. Let me add to it, if the Supreme Court says you can't have the 10 Commandments, well, then what in the world are they going to do with their own pediment? We just had a shot of it in the story. Go take a look at that. You'll see 3 lawgivers up there. One of them is Confucius. The other one is Solon from ancient Greece. But there's also Moses, and Moses as the lawgiver, a fundamental to Western civilization. Let's recognize that, and above all, let's start teaching that to our children.